Royal Smile, the king's jubilant journey to his birthday. In the streets, townspeople hung bright, colorful banners, their edges fluttering in the gentle breeze. Every shop window was decorated with garlands of flowers and sparkling ribbons. Children ran through the cobbled streets carrying little handmade signs and paper lanterns, giggling as they practiced songs they would sing on the special day. The air smelled sweet with the fragrance of freshly picked flowers and baked goods, and laughter seemed to echo from every corner. It was not just another day in the kingdom. It was a day when joy and celebration would fill every heart. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was equally lively but in a more organized way. The corridors, usually calm and silent in the early mornings, now echoed with hurried footsteps and soft chatter. Courtiers and servants moved back and forth carrying trays of fruits, gifts, and bundles of silk to decorate the great halls. The palace kitchens were busy with cooks stirring large pots of sweet puddings, baking golden bread, and roasting tender meats. The smell of spices, sugar, and freshly baked bread floated into the halls, making anyone who passed by smile in anticipation. Even the palace gardens were being tended more carefully than ever. Gardeners trimmed the hedges into beautiful shapes, planted fresh flowers in patterns, and polished the fountains until the water sparkled like liquid crystal. High above this lively scene, in his private chamber, the king stood by a large window looking down at the bustling kingdom below. The morning sunlight touched his face, and he smiled quietly to himself. It was a gentle smile, not forced or proud, but one that came from deep within his heart. He watched the children running in the streets, waving their handmade signs and laughing with pure joy. He could see the townspeople hanging banners and decorating their shops, and it warmed him to know that so many people cared enough to make this day special for him. Despite being a king, he often thought about how lucky he was to have such loyal and loving people around him. He turned away from the window and walked slowly across the chamber. On his desk lay several letters from citizens wishing him well. Some were beautifully written on thick paper, with neat handwriting and colorful illustrations. Others were simple notes, carefully folded and sealed with wax, showing the thoughtfulness of the people who had sent them. The king picked up one by one and read them silently. Each note made him smile, not because he was proud, but because he felt connected to each person who had taken the time to send their wishes. He kept them close, thinking of them as small treasures that reminded him of the kindness in his kingdom. As he walked toward the balcony, he noticed his personal attendants preparing his royal garments for the day. The fabrics were soft and rich, the colors bright and cheerful. The attendants worked carefully, making sure every detail was perfect. The king watched them for a moment and chuckled quietly, thinking of how even the smallest things mattered to his people, and how they had gone to such lengths to make him happy. He appreciated their effort, but he also knew that the true joy of the day would not come from fancy clothes or gifts. It would come from being with his people, sharing smiles and laughter, and celebrating the life they had built together. Stepping onto the balcony, the king took a deep breath and looked out over the city. The streets were now completely decorated, and a gentle hum of excitement could be heard from below. Children waved at him enthusiastically, and merchants stopped their work to bow or wave. Even the birds seemed to sing louder that morning, as if joining in the celebration. The king lifted his hand in greeting, and his smile shone bright and warm, reaching every face that looked up to him. People waved back with equal joy, their eyes sparkling with happiness. It was a moment that reminded the king why he loved his kingdom so deeply. Every smile, every laugh, every small act of kindness was part of what made his life meaningful. As the day continued, the king walked through the palace gardens, greeting the courtiers and workers. The gardeners bowed respectfully, showing him the new flower arrangements they had created. The chefs brought small dishes for him to taste, their faces hopeful that he would enjoy their work. The king sampled each one, giving honest compliments and gentle advice with a kind smile. His presence made everyone around him feel important, valued, and noticed. It was not the grandeur of the palace or the richness of his clothes that mattered, but the warmth and sincerity he shared with others. Even the animals in the palace seemed to sense the happiness of the day. The royal horses neighed softly as they were brushed and fed. The birds in the aviary chirped melodious tunes, and the palace cats and dogs wandered happily around the gardens. The king paused for a moment to watch a small rabbit hopping near the fountain. He laughed softly, feeling a sense of peace. Life, he realized, was full of simple joys, and today was a day to celebrate them all. As the sun climbed higher, the palace bell rang, signaling the start of the official preparations for the day. Servants hurried to arrange chairs and tables. Musicians practiced their songs in the grand hall, and children were taught the final verses of the songs they would sing. The king observed all this with quiet amusement, noting how everyone worked together with such energy and dedication. He could see the excitement on their faces, and it reminded him of how celebrations were not just about the person being honored, but about bringing people together. Later, the king retired to his study for a few moments of quiet reflection. He opened a small book of memories, written by his own hand over the years. Each page contained notes of important events, small victories, and even mistakes he had learned from. As he read, he thought about the journey that had brought him here, the challenges he had faced, the people who had helped him, and the moments of joy that had made all the hard work worthwhile. He realized that the happiness of his people was deeply tied to his own, and that their smiles were a reward greater than any treasure. By mid-morning, the streets outside were filled with people eager to see their king and wish him a happy birthday. Merchants called out cheerfully from their stalls, children danced to the tunes of street musicians, and families brought small gifts, flowers, and hand-drawn pictures. The king could hear the laughter and chatter from his balcony and felt his heart swell with gratitude. Today was more than just his birthday. It was a celebration of community, kindness, and the simple joys of life. As the first rays of sunlight passed over the palace and lit up the kingdom, the king felt a wave of happiness and calm. He took a deep breath, savoring the moment. He knew that there would be surprises and perhaps even small challenges throughout the day, but he was ready to face them with the same gentle smile and kind heart that had guided him all these years. The anticipation of the day, the excitement of the people, and the warmth of his own heart came together in a perfect harmony, marking the beginning of what promised to be a truly jubilant birthday. With a final glance at the decorated streets and the joyful citizens below, the king stepped back into the palace. He knew that his role was not just to rule, but to inspire happiness, kindness, and unity. And on this day, as the kingdom celebrated his life, he also celebrated theirs, the people whose smiles, laughter, and love made his journey as a king so meaningful. The morning of his birthday had begun, filled with color, music, laughter, and hope. The king's heart was light, his spirit uplifted, and his smile was as bright as the sun above. It was a day that promised joy, surprises, and cherished memories. And as he walked through the palace halls, ready to greet his people, he carried a quiet thought in his heart, that the true celebration of life lay not in grandeur or wealth, but in the simple, pure happiness shared between a king and his people. The morning of the king's birthday had arrived in full splendor, and the palace was already buzzing with life. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, filling every corner with warmth and cheer. The king, still in his royal robes, had just finished his morning routine and was ready to meet the day. The palace staff moved quickly but carefully, carrying trays of fresh fruits, fragrant flowers, and delicate pastries to the dining hall. Every servant knew that the king's birthday was not just a celebration for him, but a day when the entire palace and kingdom shared in joy. The king stepped into the great dining hall, where sunlight reflected off polished golden surfaces and colorful tapestries hung on the walls. The long tables were arranged with precision, each setting decorated with small flower arrangements. Sweet aromas from the kitchen filled the air, tempting the king's senses. Yet, what brought him the most happiness was not the food or decorations, but the knowledge that soon children, citizens, and friends would gather to share smiles, songs, and laughter. He walked slowly, greeting each attendant and courtier with a gentle nod or kind word. His presence alone seemed to lift the spirits of everyone around him. From the palace balcony, the king could see the streets lined with people eager to participate in the day's celebrations. Families, merchants, and children all wore bright colors, carrying flowers, flags, and handmade cards. Children's laughter echoed through the city as they practiced their songs, their tiny voices blending with the soft sounds of musical instruments being tuned nearby. The king watched, smiling quietly, feeling a wave of warmth and gratitude. He remembered being a child himself, running through the palace gardens, playing with friends, and dreaming of the day he would become a king. Now, he thought, the joy of seeing so many young faces filled with excitement was more wonderful than any gift he could ever receive. The first visitors arrived shortly after the sun climbed higher. A group of children from the neighboring village approached, each holding a handmade card or drawing. Their eyes sparkled with excitement and a touch of nervousness, for meeting the king was a momentous occasion for them. The king knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to their level, and accepted each card with genuine delight. He complimented the drawings, asked questions about their stories, and laughed at their small jokes. The children's faces lit up with pride and happiness, and the king's laughter mingled with theirs, creating a melody of joy that floated through the halls. Meanwhile, the palace musicians were rehearsing for the morning performance. Strings, flutes, and drums echoed softly through the corridors as the musicians tuned their instruments and played short, cheerful pieces. The king paused to listen, tapping his fingers lightly to the rhythm, his face glowing with appreciation. Music, he thought, had a way of connecting people beyond words. It spoke to the heart and lifted the spirit, much like a warm smile on a bright morning. The sound of music combined with the laughter of children and the bustle of palace life created an atmosphere of celebration that seemed almost magical. As the morning progressed, the king decided to take a ride through the streets of the kingdom. Mounted on his favorite horse, a majestic creature with a glossy chestnut coat, he rode slowly through the cobbled streets, waving and smiling at everyone he passed. Citizens came out of their homes and shops to greet him, their faces beaming with happiness. Children ran alongside, waving small flags and singing songs they had practiced for weeks. Merchants bowed respectfully, offering him small gifts or tokens of appreciation. The king accepted each gesture with humility and gratitude, knowing that these simple acts of kindness reflected the love and loyalty of his people. The king's ride took him past the market square, where stalls were overflowing with fruits, vegetables, baked goods, and handcrafted items. The merchants had decorated their stalls with flowers and ribbons, eager to honor the king on his special day. He stopped briefly to taste a sweet pastry offered by an elderly baker, whose hands trembled slightly with excitement. "Delicious," the king said warmly, and the baker's eyes sparkled with pride. Everywhere he looked, the king saw signs of preparation, care, and thoughtfulness. It filled his heart with joy to witness how much effort people had put into making the day memorable. As the sun rose higher in the sky, a gentle breeze carried the sounds of laughter, music, and conversation across the streets. Birds chirped from the trees lining the city, adding their own melodies to the growing chorus of celebration. The king felt a deep sense of peace as he observed the happiness around him. He thought about how fortunate he was to live in a kingdom where people valued kindness, community, and joy. For him, the day was not about receiving gifts or attention. It was about sharing happiness, creating memories, and connecting with the people he cared for deeply. Back at the palace, the kitchens were preparing a special breakfast feast for the king. Chefs worked carefully, arranging dishes that were both beautiful and delicious. Golden croissants, freshly baked bread, sweet honey cakes, and bowls of fresh fruit lined the tables. Servants carried trays carefully, making sure each dish looked perfect before placing it in the dining hall. The king entered to find the table set beautifully, the aroma of fresh food filling the air. Yet even here, he focused more on the people than the food. He thanked each chef and attendant personally, sharing a kind word or a gentle smile. His warmth and attention made everyone feel appreciated, and the servants worked with even more energy, inspired by his presence. After breakfast, the king decided to host a small gathering of children in the palace garden. The garden was alive with colors, flowers in every shade of the rainbow, neatly trimmed hedges, and fountains that sparkled in the sunlight. The children gathered on the soft grass, holding handmade gifts and drawings. The king knelt down, asking about each child's creation, listening to their stories and laughing at their imaginative ideas. Some of the children shyly presented songs they had written, and the king clapped enthusiastically, encouraging them to sing louder. Laughter and applause echoed through the garden, and the king's gentle smile grew wider with every passing moment. As the morning slowly passed into late morning, the king's joy only increased. He watched the children run through the gardens, their laughter ringing like music. He listened to the stories of the people who had come from nearby villages, and he shared light-hearted conversations with courtiers and attendants alike. Every interaction reminded him of the simple beauty of connection and community. It was a reminder that even a king, with all his responsibilities and power, could find happiness in the small moments of everyday life. By mid-morning, the streets outside the palace were filled with people who had come to participate in the celebrations. Families waved from their windows, children held hands and skipped along the streets, and musicians played cheerful tunes that invited everyone to dance. The king's heart swelled with gratitude as he looked down from his balcony. He could see the joy reflected in every face, and he knew that the efforts of the people, from decorating streets to practicing songs, had transformed the kingdom into a living tapestry of celebration. The king took a moment to reflect quietly. He thought about the years that had passed, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned. He realized that happiness was not found in wealth or power, but in the connections shared with others. A simple smile, a kind word, or a shared laugh could brighten someone's day more than any treasure. Today, he thought, would be a day of such moments, a day where every smile reflected the love and unity of the kingdom. As the sun reached its peak, signaling the beginning of the official celebrations, the king prepared to greet the first wave of visitors. Citizens, children, and friends lined the streets and palace halls, each eager to share their wishes and gifts. The king's heart was full as he stepped onto the balcony once more, waving to the crowd below. Their cheers, laughter, and songs washed over him like a gentle wave, filling him with warmth and pride. He waved, smiled, and nodded to everyone he could see, knowing that these moments of connection were what made his role as king truly meaningful. The morning of celebration continued, filled with music, laughter, and joy. The king walked among his people, speaking with each visitor, listening to their stories, and sharing his own light-hearted tales. Every person he met left with a smile, and every interaction added to the happiness that flowed through the palace and streets alike. For the king, the morning was a reminder of the simple yet profound truth, that the greatest gift of all was the love and happiness shared among people, a gift far richer than any treasure or crown. As the first part of the day came to a close, the king returned to his private chamber for a moment of quiet reflection. He looked out over the city, now alive with music, color, and laughter. The joy he had witnessed throughout the morning filled him with gratitude. He understood that this day, like all days, was a chance to share kindness, inspire happiness, and strengthen the bonds that held the kingdom together. With a deep, contented breath, he prepared himself for the rest of the day, knowing that more surprises, joy, and laughter awaited him. The morning had been a perfect beginning. It was a time of smiles, shared happiness, and small but meaningful moments that would be remembered long after the sun had set. And as the king walked through the palace halls, ready to greet more visitors, he carried a quiet thought in his heart, that true joy was not in grand celebrations alone, but in the love, laughter, and connection shared with every person he met. The morning had been filled with laughter, music, and joy. But as the day progressed, the king knew that not everything might go as perfectly as planned. Even the most carefully prepared celebrations could encounter surprises. However, the king was not one to worry. He had learned over the years that challenges were simply another way for people to show creativity, kindness, and resilience. With a gentle smile on his face, he continued to greet visitors and oversee the day's events, ready to turn any obstacle into an opportunity for laughter and togetherness. As the late morning sun began to warm the kingdom, the first challenge of the day appeared. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, moving quickly toward the city. A sudden breeze rustled the banners hanging across the streets, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Citizens looked up nervously, worried that their carefully prepared decorations might be ruined. The king, seeing the concern on their faces, did not panic. Instead, he raised his hand and waved, calling for calm. "Do not worry," he said in his soft, comforting voice. "A little rain cannot stop our happiness. We will find new ways to celebrate, and I promise the day will still be full of joy." True to his word, the king and his attendants quickly came up with a plan. The outdoor games and performances could be moved indoors to the grand hall, which had enough space to accommodate everyone comfortably. Servants and courtiers worked together, carrying tables, chairs, and decorations from the streets inside. Children, who had initially looked worried, were soon giggling again as they helped carry small props and flowers. The king walked among them, praising their efforts and turning what could have been a disappointment into a lively, cheerful activity. His calm and cheerful attitude encouraged everyone to focus on the joy of the day rather than the weather. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, the chefs and kitchen staff faced a minor challenge of their own. Some of the ingredients for the special birthday feast had been delayed, causing concern that the food might not be ready on time. The king, aware of the situation, calmly went to the kitchens to offer encouragement. He did not scold or demand. Instead, he asked the chefs if they needed help or ideas. Together, they came up with creative solutions, adjusting recipes slightly, and using what they had to prepare dishes that were just as delicious. The king even tasted small samples, smiling warmly as he complimented their ingenuity. His presence inspired the kitchen staff to work faster and with renewed energy, knowing that their efforts were appreciated and valued. As the morning moved toward noon, another unexpected event occurred. One of the visiting performers, a group of musicians who had traveled from a distant village, arrived later than expected due to muddy roads caused by the rain. There was a risk that their performance, which many children had been looking forward to, might be delayed or canceled. The king, however, did not fret. He greeted the musicians warmly, listened to their explanation, and suggested a few changes to the schedule so that everyone could enjoy the performance. His calm and understanding nature reassured both the performers and the audience, who were watching from the palace windows and gardens. By early afternoon, the palace had been transformed from a sunny outdoor festival into a lively indoor celebration. The grand hall was filled with the cheerful sounds of children playing, people talking, and music being practiced for the main performance. The king walked slowly through the crowd, taking time to speak with each person he met. He asked children about their drawings and gifts, complimented musicians on their tunes, and thanked courtiers and servants for their hard work. Every interaction was filled with warmth and attention, reminding everyone that they were important and valued. His genuine smile lifted the spirits of those around him, turning minor challenges into shared experiences of joy. The children were especially excited. Some had prepared little songs, poems, or short plays to perform for the king, and the indoor space allowed them to practice and present their work comfortably. The king encouraged each child with kind words, clapping for their efforts and offering gentle advice when needed. He joined in their laughter and even attempted a few playful gestures to make them giggle. The children's eyes shone with pride, and their happiness filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. For the king, these moments were priceless, as they reflected the true purpose of his birthday celebration: to bring joy to the hearts of others. Outside, despite the rain, citizens had not lost their enthusiasm. From windows and balconies, people waved to the king, sang songs, and displayed their colorful banners and handmade gifts. Some families had quickly moved their own small celebrations indoors, creating little gatherings in their homes that reflected the larger festive spirit. Seeing this, the king's heart swelled with gratitude. He understood that happiness was not dependent on perfect conditions, but on the effort and love people put into sharing it with others. Rain or shine, he thought, the spirit of celebration could not be dampened. The musicians finally arrived, and the grand hall filled with lively melodies that lifted everyone's spirits. Children clapped along to the rhythm, some dancing while others hummed along to familiar tunes. The king watched, smiling widely, as the performers adjusted to the indoor space and delivered a performance even better than expected. He joined in the applause, cheering and laughing with genuine delight. His joy was contagious, and soon everyone in the hall was singing and clapping together, creating a sense of unity and happiness that transcended any obstacles the day had brought. During a short break, the king took a quiet moment to reflect on the morning. He thought about how unexpected events often brought out the best in people. The rain had forced creativity, delayed gifts had inspired patience, and late performers had encouraged flexibility and understanding. He realized that these challenges had made the day even more memorable, not less. A true celebration, he thought, was not just about perfect conditions, but about turning difficulties into opportunities for shared joy. His smile deepened as he walked among the people again, offering words of encouragement and listening to their stories. Later, the king participated in some of the indoor games that had been organized for the children. There were races through the hallways, treasure hunts among the palace corridors, and storytelling competitions where children shared imaginative tales. The king joined in with light-hearted enthusiasm, sometimes pretending to lose a race or laughably misplacing a hidden treasure. The children's laughter filled the halls, and the courtiers and attendants could not help but smile at the sight of their king engaging with such joy. Even the older citizens, who might have expected a more formal celebration, found themselves laughing and clapping along. As the afternoon wore on, the king noticed that everyone, young and old alike, had learned something important. They had discovered that celebrations were about more than decorations, food, or schedules. They were about connection, kindness, and shared happiness. The king's own joy was a mirror for the people, reflecting back the care and effort they had put into making his birthday special. He walked slowly through the hall, greeting musicians, children, families, and courtiers, his gentle smile never fading. By mid-afternoon, the palace gardens had begun to dry, and sunlight broke through the clouds. The king decided to take another short ride through the city, this time on a smaller, decorated horse suitable for children to join him safely. Citizens had lined the streets again, waving colorful flags, singing and offering small gifts. The king nodded and waved, acknowledging everyone's efforts with warmth and gratitude. Children laughed as they rode alongside him in a safe and joyful procession, waving to the citizens and singing the songs they had practiced. The kingdom seemed alive with movement, music, and cheer, and the king's heart swelled with pride and happiness. Even as the day progressed and more surprises occurred, the king handled each one with patience, kindness, and humor. A cart carrying gifts temporarily got stuck in the mud, but he laughed and encouraged everyone to push together, turning the moment into a fun challenge. A young musician forgot part of a song, and the king joined in, helping them remember the melody and making everyone laugh. Through each small difficulty, he demonstrated that challenges could be met with grace and turned into joyful memories. By the late afternoon, the indoor celebrations were in full swing. The king walked among the crowd, observing the laughter, music, and games. He stopped frequently to speak with children and citizens, listen to their stories, and share in their excitement. Every smile he received seemed to brighten his own, and every laugh echoed in his heart. The challenges of the day, the rain, delays, and unexpected obstacles, had not dampened the celebration but had instead strengthened the bonds between the king and his people. As the sun began to lower in the sky, signaling the approach of evening, the king took a moment to reflect on the day. He thought about the resilience, creativity, and kindness of his people. He realized that these qualities were the true treasures of the kingdom, far more valuable than gold or jewels. Every person, from the youngest child to the oldest citizen, had contributed to the joy of the day, and he felt deeply grateful for their efforts. The king's heart was full, and his smile was brighter than ever. The late afternoon was filled with music, laughter, and storytelling, as the palace echoed with the sounds of happiness. The king watched with contentment as children danced, citizens sang, and musicians played. The room was alive with energy, and everyone felt a part of something larger than themselves. The king knew that these moments of shared joy were what made life meaningful, and he cherished every smile, every laugh, and every expression of love and care he witnessed. As the afternoon drew to a close, the king prepared for the next part of the celebration, confident that even the remaining surprises would be met with patience, creativity, and happiness. The challenges of the day had already proven that joy could be found in every moment, even in unexpected circumstances. With a heart full of gratitude and a smile that reflected the love of his people, the king looked forward to the evening festivities, knowing that the day's journey had already been one of laughter, resilience, and unforgettable memories. As the late afternoon sun began to fade, the palace prepared for the most awaited part of the king's birthday, the grand evening celebration. Lanterns, freshly polished and glowing with soft golden light, were being placed carefully around the palace gardens and hallways. The musicians had tuned their instruments, and their soft melodies filled the corridors, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. The staff moved quickly, carrying trays of delicious food and arranging chairs and tables to accommodate all the guests. The king, with his ever-present gentle smile, watched quietly for a moment, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The day had already been filled with laughter, joy, and unexpected surprises, and he knew that the evening would be even more memorable. As twilight approached, guests began to arrive from all corners of the kingdom. Courtiers, citizens, and even visitors from nearby villages came dressed in their finest clothes. Children carried gifts, drawings, and handmade cards, while families brought flowers and baskets of fruits to honor the king. The air was filled with excitement and warmth, and the king's heart swelled with happiness. Every person who entered the palace was greeted with a kind word, a nod, or a gentle smile. The king understood that his presence alone could make people feel valued, and he moved gracefully among the guests, offering attention and encouragement wherever it was needed. The palace gardens, now illuminated by lanterns, looked magical. The soft glow reflected on the fountains and flower beds, creating a shimmering, almost dreamlike atmosphere. The air was filled with the fragrance of fresh flowers and the subtle aroma of the evening feast being prepared. Citizens and children walked through the gardens, enjoying the beauty and charm of the palace. The king paused for a moment to admire the scene. He thought about how fortunate he was to live in a kingdom where people cared so much for each other and for the celebrations that brought them together. For him, these moments were priceless, more valuable than any treasure or decoration. Soon, the king took his place at the head of the main banquet table in the grand hall. The room was decorated with colorful ribbons, fresh flowers, and glowing lanterns. The tables were covered with fine linens, and dishes of carefully prepared food were arranged elegantly. But it was not the decorations or the food that made the king happiest. It was seeing the smiles of the people around him. Children sat in front, eager to show their songs and drawings. Courtiers and citizens filled the hall, their faces reflecting excitement and joy. The king's smile widened as he looked around, realizing that the true celebration was not just for him, but for everyone present. The first performance of the evening began with the palace children presenting a short play they had prepared. They had dressed in bright, colorful costumes and had memorized their lines carefully. The king watched attentively, clapping and laughing at the funny moments, and encouraging the shy children with gentle nods and kind words. The hall echoed with laughter, applause, and cheers, and the children's eyes sparkled with pride and happiness. The king felt a deep sense of fulfillment as he realized that these small efforts, these acts of creativity and courage, were the true highlights of the day. After the children's play, musicians performed a series of cheerful songs. The melodies were lively and joyful, and the king could not help but tap his fingers and sway slightly to the rhythm. Citizens and courtiers joined in clapping, and soon everyone in the hall was singing along to familiar tunes. The king smiled at the sight, knowing that music had a unique power to unite people. It did not matter where someone came from or what their age was. Everyone could join in, and everyone could share in the happiness of the moment. The performance became more than just entertainment. It became a symbol of the unity and joy of the kingdom. During a brief pause in the performances, the king took a moment to walk among the guests. He spoke with families, asked children about their drawings and songs, and complimented the musicians on their skill. His attention was sincere and personal, and everyone he spoke to felt valued and appreciated. Even the youngest child, shyly presenting a small handmade card, received a warm smile and kind words from the king. These small interactions created a sense of closeness and warmth throughout the hall, reminding everyone that the true spirit of celebration came from sharing joy and kindness. Meanwhile, in the palace kitchens, the staff had prepared a magnificent feast for the evening. Tables were filled with roasted meats, fresh bread, sweet pastries, colorful fruits, and a variety of local delicacies. The aroma filled the grand hall as the servants carried the dishes to the tables. The king observed the staff carefully, praising their hard work and creativity. His gentle words and encouraging smile inspired them to continue working diligently, knowing that their efforts were appreciated by both the king and the guests. Even small acts, like arranging flowers on the tables or polishing the silverware, were performed with extra care because everyone wanted to contribute to the happiness of the day. As the evening progressed, a group of elder citizens were invited to share stories of the kingdom's history. They spoke of brave deeds, kind acts, and moments of unity that had shaped the community over the years. The king listened attentively, nodding and smiling as he heard each tale. He asked thoughtful questions, encouraged the storytellers, and expressed his gratitude for their wisdom. The hall was filled with a sense of reverence and appreciation, as well as laughter and light-hearted remarks when the stories took a funny turn. For the king, these stories were more than just entertainment. They were a reminder of the legacy of kindness, courage, and connection that bound the kingdom together. Later, the king joined in a special activity organized for the children. There was a small treasure hunt arranged inside the palace hall and gardens. Children ran around in excitement, following clues and discovering small surprises hidden in the nooks and corners. The king laughed along with them, pretending to misplace a clue or to be surprised when a child found a hidden treasure. His playful participation made the children even more excited and engaged, and their laughter created a ripple of happiness that spread throughout the hall. Even the adults joined in, helping guide the younger children and sharing in the joy of the activity. As the evening wore on, the king noticed that the celebrations had brought people together in ways that were truly special. Strangers were talking and laughing, families were sharing meals with others, and children from different villages played side by side without any hesitation. The king realized that the true meaning of his birthday was not in receiving gifts or attention, but in creating moments of connection and joy that everyone could share. Every smile, every cheer, and every expression of happiness was a gift to him, more valuable than any gold or jewel. Soon, a surprise performance was arranged by the palace children. They had been secretly preparing a small musical presentation, combining singing, dancing, and storytelling. When they began, the hall erupted in applause and cheers. The king's eyes sparkled as he watched, clapping along with genuine delight. He encouraged the children, sometimes joining in with small gestures or playful movements, and the laughter that followed spread to everyone present. The children's effort, creativity, and courage reflected the spirit of the kingdom, joyful, kind, and united. During the later part of the evening, the king took a few quiet moments to himself on a small balcony overlooking the gardens. The lanterns below glowed softly, illuminating the faces of people enjoying the celebrations. He reflected on the day so far, the laughter, the music, the stories, the playful moments, and even the small challenges that had been overcome. Each part of the day had reminded him of the importance of patience, kindness, and the joy of being present with others. His smile deepened as he realized that every small effort, every thoughtful act, and every shared moment had contributed to a celebration far greater than he could have imagined. As the evening drew closer to night, the final feast began. Tables were filled with dishes of all kinds, carefully prepared by the palace chefs. The king took a seat at the head of the table, surrounded by children, courtiers, and guests from the kingdom. Everyone shared food, laughter, and conversation. The king spoke words of gratitude, thanking everyone for their participation, effort, and kindness. He expressed how much it meant to him that everyone had come together to make the day special. His words were simple, warm, and heartfelt, and they were met with smiles, nods, and soft cheers. After the feast, the hall quieted slightly for a few reflective moments. The king encouraged the guests to look around, to see the joy in each other's faces, and to feel proud of the celebration they had created together. He reminded them that every smile, every laugh, and every act of kindness was part of what made their kingdom strong and happy. The children, still energetic and full of excitement, sat nearby, listening attentively and occasionally giggling at the king's playful comments. The king's calm and joyful presence reminded everyone that true happiness could be found in the company of others, in shared moments of love and laughter. As the evening came to a close, the king took a moment to walk once more through the hall and the gardens. He waved to the children, thanked the guests, and encouraged everyone to continue sharing joy and kindness long after the birthday celebration ended. The lanterns glowed softly around him, reflecting in his warm smile, and the music of the evening lingered in the air. The king felt deeply satisfied, knowing that the day had been filled with laughter, love, and unforgettable memories. Every small challenge, every unexpected moment, and every shared act of kindness had contributed to a celebration that would be remembered for years to come. Finally, as the stars began to appear in the sky, the king paused in the quiet of the palace gardens. He looked out over the kingdom, the soft glow of lanterns and candles lighting up the streets, gardens, and homes. He realized that this day was more than a birthday. It was a celebration of community, of resilience, and of the simple joys that connected people to one another. His smile was calm, gentle, and full of gratitude. The evening had been a journey of happiness, and the king knew that the memories created tonight would remain in the hearts of his people forever. As the night settled over the kingdom, a soft calm replaced the laughter and music that had filled the palace throughout the day. The lanterns in the gardens glowed gently, casting a warm light over the walkways and fountains. From his balcony, the king looked out over the city, where the last few citizens lingered, waving and singing softly, wishing him well before returning home. The day had been filled with joy, surprises, and shared moments of happiness, but now it was time for quiet reflection. The king took a deep breath, letting the cool night air fill his lungs, and thought about everything that had happened since the morning. He remembered the early hours, when children from the nearby villages had come with handmade cards and drawings. Their nervous excitement and shy smiles had quickly turned into laughter and pride as he accepted each gift warmly. The king had knelt to their level, speaking gently and listening intently. Those small interactions had set the tone for the entire day, reminding him that joy could be found in simple acts of kindness and attention. It was not the grandeur of the palace or the richness of the feast that mattered most, but the happiness reflected in the faces of the people around him. The king recalled the unexpected rain in the late morning and how it had initially caused worry among the citizens. Banners had drooped, decorations had grown wet, and outdoor games had been interrupted. Yet, those small challenges had become opportunities for creativity and teamwork. The palace staff had moved activities indoors, rearranging furniture, decorations, and even musical performances with great care. The children had laughed as they carried small props and flowers, and the king himself had joined in the cheerful chaos, showing that patience and a calm smile could turn obstacles into joyful experiences. He thought about the musicians who had arrived late due to the muddy roads, and how a slight delay could have disappointed many. Instead, with calm encouragement, the king had helped adjust the schedule, allowing everyone to enjoy the performance fully. The hall had filled with music and laughter, the children clapping along, and even the older citizens tapping their feet to the rhythm. The king realized that flexibility and understanding were just as important as planning and preparation. A celebration, he thought, was not about perfection, but about the spirit with which it was shared. The king remembered walking through the gardens with the children during the afternoon. Their laughter had echoed across the palace lawns, and their excitement had been infectious. Some had participated in a treasure hunt, others had shown drawings or practiced songs, and a few had even tried to play small instruments with guidance from the musicians. The king had joined in their fun, sometimes pretending to misplace a clue or forgetting a line in a song, making the children giggle uncontrollably. Those playful moments had strengthened the bond between him and the people, showing that even a king could share in light-hearted joy without any formality or pretense. As evening approached, the grand banquet had begun. Tables were filled with beautifully prepared dishes, the aroma of roasted meats, fresh bread, sweet pastries, and colorful fruits filling the hall. The king had taken his place at the head of the table, surrounded by children, courtiers, and citizens. He had expressed heartfelt gratitude for the participation and effort of everyone present. His words had been simple yet sincere, reminding all that their presence, kindness, and contributions were the true treasures of the day. Guests had smiled, nodded, and softly cheered, feeling acknowledged and appreciated in a way that no fancy gift or decoration could replace. The children's performance later that evening had been a highlight. They had combined singing, dancing, and storytelling, surprising the king and guests with their creativity. He had clapped, laughed, and even joined in a few playful gestures, making the hall echo with joy. The king realized that moments like these were what made celebrations memorable. It was not just about watching others perform, but about engaging, encouraging, and participating together. Those shared experiences created memories that everyone would carry in their hearts long after the lanterns were extinguished. The king also reflected on the stories shared by the elder citizens. Tales of bravery, kindness, and unity had reminded him of the values that held the kingdom together. The listeners had been captivated, and laughter had mixed with moments of thoughtful silence. The king had asked questions, listened intently, and expressed his gratitude. Through these stories, he saw the strength of his people, not just in numbers or wealth, but in character, compassion, and resilience. Their experiences had woven a tapestry of lessons and memories, connecting past generations to the present and inspiring hope for the future. Walking again through the gardens as the night deepened, the king noticed the quiet joy of families lingering together. Children played softly, holding small gifts or drawing in notebooks, while parents exchanged smiles and stories. Couples strolled hand in hand, pointing out the glowing lanterns and reflecting on the day. Even the palace staff, now resting after their long hours of work, walked through the paths quietly, enjoying the peaceful beauty of the evening. The king understood that these were the moments that truly defined a celebration, the small, simple joys that brought people together in a shared sense of happiness and gratitude. The king took a few minutes to visit the musicians and performers again. He thanked them personally for their talent and dedication, praising their efforts in front of the audience to encourage their continued joy and motivation. The musicians smiled, feeling seen and appreciated, and the children waved shyly as he complimented their performances. These acts, though small, reflected the king's philosophy that every person's effort was meaningful and that recognition could inspire confidence and happiness in others. Later, the king sat quietly for a while on a small garden bench near a fountain. The gentle sound of water mixed with the soft night breeze and the distant hum of laughter from the hall. He reflected on the day's journey, from the first morning greetings, to the challenges of the rain, to the laughter and music of the evening. Each moment had been an opportunity to connect with his people, to witness kindness, creativity, and joy in countless forms. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment. The day had reminded him that life's true rewards were not gold or power, but the love, respect, and happiness shared among people. He thought of the children who had laughed and played, the citizens who had participated wholeheartedly, and the staff who had worked tirelessly to make the day successful. Each contribution, no matter how small, had been essential to the spirit of the celebration. The king realized that every smile he had received reflected back the love and loyalty of the people. In turn, his own smile, genuine and warm, had encouraged and inspired them. The exchange of joy, kindness, and gratitude was the true essence of the day, and he felt blessed to witness it firsthand. As the lanterns flickered softly in the cool night air, the king walked slowly back into the palace. He paused at the entrance to the hall, looking at the final scenes of the celebration. The families sharing stories, children showing off their drawings, and musicians quietly tuning their instruments for one last soft performance. The king's heart swelled with pride and contentment. He knew that while the day of his birthday might come only once a year, the values it celebrated, kindness, joy, togetherness, and gratitude, would continue every day through the actions of the people of his kingdom. Finally, as the night reached its deepest hours, the palace gradually quieted. Guests left for their homes, thanking the king and expressing their happiness. The children waved sleepily, holding small gifts, while their parents smiled and guided them gently through the gardens. The staff tidied the halls, making sure everything was ready for the morning, while the king took one last quiet walk through the palace gardens. The lanterns dimmed as the night grew darker, leaving a soft glow over the paths and flower beds. The king paused one final time on the balcony, looking up at the starlit sky. The city below was quiet now, the streets emptying, the homes peaceful. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for the day, for his people, and for the simple yet extraordinary moments that had made his birthday celebration unforgettable. He realized that the happiness of the kingdom and the joy of its people were deeply connected to his own heart. Each smile he had received and each laugh he had shared had been a reminder that true leadership was measured not by power, but by love, kindness, and the ability to inspire joy. With a calm and contented smile, the king finally retired to his private chambers. He reflected one last time on the journey of the day, remembering the laughter, music, stories, and shared moments. He understood that life was full of small, precious opportunities to connect, to give happiness, and to receive it in return. The memories of the day would remain in his heart forever, not just as a celebration of his own life, but as a testament to the love and unity of his kingdom. As he lay down to rest, the king's heart was light, filled with gratitude and warmth. The kingdom was peaceful, the citizens were happy, and the bonds of love and joy had been strengthened once again. He knew that while birthdays came and went, the true celebration of life lay in the smiles, laughter, and shared happiness of every day. With that thought, he closed his eyes, carrying the warmth of the day in his heart, and drifted into a calm, restful sleep, dreaming of more days filled with laughter, love, and the radiant joy of his people.